In the winter of 1847, the coldest Burke County, Georgia had seen in 20 years, Catherine Thornhill buried her husband, Jonathan, and inherited a dying plantation. Thornhill Estate sprawled across 1,700 acres of exhausted red clay soil, 7 miles southwest of Waynesboro. Once prosperous, the property now groaned under heavy mortgages, depleted fields, and crumbling infrastructure. Jonathan had been a poor manager and enthusiastic gambler. By his death from winter fever, creditors circled like buzzards. Only 31 enslaved people remained, 11 men, 13 women, and 7 children, after 16 others had been sold to satisfy debts. Catherine, 28, had married Jonathan at 19 in a strategic match arranged by her prominent Augusta family, the Danforths. Educated by tutors and fluent enough in French, she expected to manage a thriving household, not a failing estate with crushing debts and a hostile 16-year-old stepson, Richard, from Jonathan's first marriage. Richard viewed her as an interloper, spent his days in the small library, and once dared suggest teaching the enslaved to read, an idea Catherine swiftly forbade. The main house, a 2-story Federal-style brick structure with peeling paint and a leaking roof, reflected the decline. Behind it lay outbuildings in disrepair, and the slave quarters beyond a line of live oaks draped in Spanish moss. Catherine met with the estate lawyer, Ambrose Talbot, who offered 2 bleak options: sell everything and return dependent to her father in Augusta, or attempt to revive the failing cotton operation with insufficient labor and worn-out land. Neither suited her. One sleepless night, poring over account books by candlelight, Catherine conceived a monstrous yet elegant plan born of cold desperation. Unable to afford new workers, she would breed them, systematically, not haphazardly as other plantations did, with minor incentives for natural increase. She would use her own body to create children biologically tied to the estate. These offspring, raised with slightly better treatment and knowledge of their special status, would later be paired to produce a self-sustaining workforce loyal by blood, impossible to sell without destroying her own lineage. Within 20 years, she calculated, Thornhill could boast 50 or more workers bound not just by law, but by genetics. She began keeping a coded journal, using agricultural euphemisms: children as seedlings, selected men as rootstock, pregnancies as plantings. Diagrams resembled livestock breeding charts. Her first choice was Isaac, a 24-year-old enslaved man known for strength and steady temperament. She summoned him to the main house after dark in March 1847. The journal recorded the events with clinical detachment. First planting completed with rootstock 1. She repeated the summons several times that month. By April, she noted success and anticipated a December harvest. Richard first suspected trouble when Catherine withdrew from rides and meals, dismissing her usual servant. Overhearing a conversation with local midwife Miriam Grayson confirmed his fears. Catherine claimed the child was Jonathan's, conceived shortly before his death, despite Richard knowing his father had been bedridden and unconscious throughout January. The timeline exposed the lie. Richard hid and watched, soon realizing Isaac was the father. His horror deepened upon secretly decoding Catherine's journal, which detailed a full breeding program, multiple children with selected men, raised as part of the workforce, then paired to expand the population genetically bound to Thornhill. Confronted indirectly, Catherine issued a veiled threat about family loyalty and the dangers of scandal tarnishing Jonathan's memory. Richard began suffering mysterious symptoms: fatigue, headaches, stomach pains, muscle weakness. Catherine feigned concern, prepared his meals, and summoned Mrs. Grayson, who diagnosed nervous exhaustion, possibly complicated by consumption. Richard recognized the signs of slow arsenic poisoning. Too weak to escape or seek help, he wrote a desperate letter to his grandfather in Augusta via a young servant, Pearl. Pearl betrayed him out of fear. Catherine burned the letter before him and whispered that the fever was clouding his mind. Richard Thornhill died on December 3, 1847, 3 weeks before his 17th birthday. The doctor listed it as consumption. Catherine wept decorously at the funeral and wore black for a full year. 4 days later, she gave birth to a healthy son she named Jonathan, claiming slight prematurity. Few questioned the timing openly. The years from 1848 to 1856 transformed the estate outwardly. Cotton production rose, the workforce grew without purchase costs, and Catherine gained a reputation as a shrewd, reclusive manager. In secret, she bore 4 more children, daughters Eleanor, Abigail, and Margaret, and son Samuel, each with different selected enslaved fathers, attended only by the now complicit Mrs. Grayson. The midwife also ensured undesirable pregnancies among the enslaved were terminated with abortifactions, sometimes forcibly, as in the tragic case of Ruth, who resisted and later died broken at 24. Catherine registered her biological children as enslaved, born to plantation women, securing legal ownership while raising them in the main house with better food, clothes, and secret literacy lessons. She told them they were fortunate orphans, taken in out of charity. Isaac was sold to Alabama once his purpose was served. The special children occupied a liminal space, resented yet pitied by others in the quarters, who whispered of the emerging pattern. By 1856, 10 such children lived there, and Catherine continued meticulous records, planning pairings decades ahead, while bearing 3 more offspring. The program was an abomination, yet logical within slavery's framework of treating humans as property. Outsiders saw nothing but a recovering plantation. The horror remained hidden behind whitewashed walls. By 1856, Thornhill Estate appeared prosperous to rare visitors, but its internal structure followed Catherine Thornhill's twisted logic. Field workers toiled under the overseer, house servants managed domestic tasks, and her 10 special children lived in or near the main house, groomed for the next phase. Catherine constructed a windowless heritage room in the East Wing, a shrine lined with coded journals, vials of hair samples, and elaborate breeding charts projecting pairings and traits like strength, intelligence, and compliance. It read like livestock manuals, with human names connected by lines noting anticipated outcomes. She tightened control, offering privileges for cooperation and threatening sales for resistance. Tragedies mounted. Sarah, 14, was forced into a pairing and died in childbirth at 15. Her mother, Violet, later drowned herself in despair. Enslaved people recognized the pattern but lacked words for it beyond horror. Catherine's criteria for rootstock remained ruthlessly practical: health, strength, no impairments, ignoring personalities. Men had no choice. Refusal meant whipping or sale. The psychological torment was profound. Fathers forced to sire children they could never claim. Tensions rose in the late 1950s with national debates over slavery's expansion, violence in Kansas, and the 1856 election. Catherine ignored politics, focusing on her program. By 1859, her eldest neared adolescence. She prepared pairings and accelerated record-keeping. The Civil War disrupted everything. Overseer Virgil Kane enlisted and died at Shiloh in 1962. His elderly replacement, Silas Kendrick, proved less effective. News of Union victories and Lincoln's proclamation filtered through enslaved networks, sparking hope. Catherine confined people to the plantation, increased rations slightly, and pushed pairings earlier. In 1863, she married her 15-year-old son Jonathan to 16-year-old Rachel in a mock ceremony. Jonathan, heavily conditioned, accepted it. Rachel endured in silence. Older special children began uncovering truths. Elenina decoded a journal, learning Catherine was her mother and field hand Thomas her father. The entries revealed the full eugenics-like scheme, including planned pairings for future generations. Confronting Catherine, she faced threats of sale to brutal Deep South plantations. Elenina shared the knowledge selectively. Jonathan struggled with indoctrination, but